have a nice short review for you with a twist. All the gameplay you're going to see today in this video is from a 12-year-old playing these games for the very first time. I thought it would be kind of neat to see what a child in 2016 would think of these late 70s and early 80s classics. Arcade's greatest hits, the Atari Collection #1, is precisely what it sounds like, the first game in a series of compilation titles. The second entry would only be released on the PlayStation, unfortunately. The Atari Collection was released in 1997 for the Saturn, and that was just about at the tail end of the system's lifespan. For its time, this is an outstanding collection. It brings together 6 classic Atari games including Asteroids, Battlezone, Centipede, Missile Command, Super Breakout, and Tempest. I could review each of these games individually, and maybe I will one day on their original platforms, but for now, let's talk about the overall compilation and how these games have aged. The first thing I can say is that the emulation is pretty much spot on. These games look pixel perfect, and it's funny I should say pixel perfect as these games are exceedingly simplistic by today's standards. Hell, they were really simple by 1997 standards. Battlezone's vector graphics are exactly as they were in the original arcade release, as too are the nicely colored mushrooms in Centipede, and so on and so forth. The audio is exactly the same as the original games as well. And this is all great because it means that the emulation is where you want it to be for these sorts of games. These 6 games were simple in design, but they had what people tend to forget about these days: quality gameplay. Each of these games has an incredible amount of depth to their simplistic gameplay. I say that because while each of these games can be simple enough to just pick up and play for a few minutes, they take hours upon hours to get good at, which is evident by the footage you're watching. My 12-year-old cousin couldn't just easily pick up these games and master them. No, he was dying constantly, and eventually actually got annoyed and said, these are just too simple. But in reality, they're not that simple. They take practice. If I had to knock this collection, it would be that not all of the games control as well as they did in the arcades. And that's thanks to the fact that the Saturn doesn't have, say, a rollerball, for example. It's not game-breaking or anything, but the experience isn't exactly as you may remember it in the arcades for, well, obvious reasons. With a little adjusting, though, you shouldn't have too many problems getting into the games. I love playing old-school collections like this, as it harkens back to a simpler time when video games were only about gameplay and literally nothing else. This compilation also includes an FMV documentary for each of the 6 games talking about the glory days of Atari, and it's actually quite fascinating, so if you pick up the game, be sure to check out the documentary. Arcade's greatest hits, the Atari Collection #1, isn't a rare Saturn game, and can be had for around $20 or so, with the PlayStation 1 version being about half that at $10. It's well worth picking up if you enjoy retro classics or are looking for some good interviews with people who made the magic happen in the first place.